Chapter 17. I woke up the next morning with only one thought on my mind: to somehow make things right for all the people I had wronged. I don't force myself to be part of my biological mother's life when she clearly didn't want me. There were about 20 missed calls from Pope and 10 text messages. I didn't return any of his calls. I wasn't ready to speak to him yet. I just want to know if you're okay. Please send me a message to tell me you're fine. I love you. Come home, please. We'll work something out. I lost Assie. I can't lose you too. Please come home. I love you, Dad. I didn't read the rest of his messages. I couldn't. If I did, my resolve would be shaken. I started by calling Lamisi. The phone rang endlessly. She didn't pick up. I called her 5 times and then I sent her a message. I'm sorry I said you were a thief. I found the watch. I'm really very sorry. She didn't reply, but at least I had tried and that's what counted. Mancha's phone was off. I suddenly had an overwhelming urge to see Nadu and to apologize for messing up her life. I had had all these notions of her being a wicked woman and making my life miserable. But I, aided and abetted by Aseye, had been the one to make her life miserable. The stepmonster had been me all along. I had to make things right somehow, and the only way I knew how was to apologize. I couldn't bring Pope and her back together, but I could tell her I was sorry. Instead of sending her a text or calling, I decided to see her in person. It was the least I could do. I took a trotro to Eden. The receptionist recognized me. She said Nadu hadn't come to work the whole of that week. She had called to say she wasn't feeling very well. I used the last of my money to charter a taxi to her house. The gate was wide open. There was no sound from within. I stepped into the compound. I noticed the change in temperature immediately. It was cooler in Nadu's compound. The tall trees and dense foliage blocked out the sun's rays. For the first time, I saw the beauty in what I had ignorantly referred to as a jungle. A tropical paradise would have been a better word to describe a garden. It was as if the scales had fallen off my eyes. I could see the order in the chaos. I could see the way the plants had been deliberately made to look wild. Because the plants were tightly packed together, it was easier to see and appreciate the uniqueness of each plant and the contribution it made in terms of color and form to the background. The colors were stunning: bright reds, brilliant yellows, lush greens, fabulous purples, and exquisite oranges. The sunlight made awesome, exquisite patterns as it passed through the various lush, multicolored leaves. A creeping vine with bright red flowers had somehow managed to wind its way through the spiky, variegated leaves of a yucca plant. As I walked to her front door, amidst the intoxicating scent of jasmines and angels' trumpets, I asked myself how I could have missed it all. How could I have been so wronged about everything? Lamisi, Aseye, Echo, Pope, and Nadu. The front door was opened. After I called out Ago a couple of times, I let myself in. The house was tidier than I had ever seen it. 3 of her indoor orchids were in bloom. I called her name twice, no response. I walked upstairs, there was no one there. Her bedroom wasn't made up like a military camp, but it wasn't as messy as before. One bedroom I immediately knew was the baby's room, looked bright and cheery. There was a cot with a bedspread of Humpty Dumpty, a rocking chair by one of the windows, and wind chimes. There were stuffed animals everywhere. In one corner was a table with a changing mat, a pack of diapers, and another pack of baby wipes. The walls were an off-white color. There was nothing that was pink or blue. Nadu still didn't know the sex of her child. I couldn't help myself. I opened the wardrobes. There were blankets, shawls, baby clothes, sleep suits, vests and bodysuits, socks and booties, more diapers, towels, and more toys. The entire room smelled of Johnson baby powder. I closed the door quietly and went back downstairs. I passed through the kitchen and into the garden in the backyard where ferns and orchids grew out of the branches of two palm trees. By the side wall of a back porch, a cluster of heliconias grew. I followed the gravelled path and went deeper into the garden. Once again, I heard the sound of water rushing. I followed it to a miniature artificial waterfall and pond. Large elephant ear plants grew straight from the water. There were aloes on one of the stone steps of the pond. Lotuses bloomed in the pond, and large, fat red goldfish swam. In another section, bamboo and papyrus grew by the edge of the water. I found Nadu seated on a wooden bench beneath a short tree, which was heavy with large yellow bell-shaped flowers. Some of the flowers had dropped to the ground. She was fast asleep. She wore a batik bubu and was barefoot as usual. Her hair was twisted and tied atop her head in the usual bun. A few tendrils had escaped and hung around her face. Her beard had grown back. I didn't mind any of those. She radiated such peace that I stood for a moment, just looking at her. There was something about her. I couldn't put my finger on it, then it hit me. She was graceful, and in her own way she was beautiful. Not in the model thin way of Asay, but she could have competed in any of the Miss Excel Plus competitions and stood out. I was surprised that I had never noticed. I drew closer to the pond to look at the goldfish and slipped on the moss covered slabs of stone. I landed with a splash in the water. Nad woke up. If she looked surprised to see me dripping wet in her pond, she didn't show. She got up slowly, holding the bench for support. She was huge. Her abdomen looked like two pillows had been tied in front of her, and all I could think was, that is Pope's real child. She looked tired. I remembered that the receptionist had said she hadn't been feeling well. Truth was, she didn't look well. There were dark circles under her eyes. Let's get you a towel, she said, like she woke up from her afternoon nap every afternoon to find her wicked stepdaughter dripping wet and sitting in her fish pond. I followed her to the house. She got me a big fluffy towel and a clean boo-boo. I dried myself, changed, and joined her outside where she was pulling some dead leaves off a fern. I came to apologize for being nasty to you. She didn't say anything, so I kept talking. I told her everything, from the extra salt to the anonymous phone calls to the minced meat in her nursery. And I came to ask you to please go back home. Pope and Nene miss you very much. I won't even be there anymore, so you don't have to worry about me. Nene is talking now. He's really excited about the baby. The three of you can be a proper family, a real family. Does your dad know you're here? I shook my head and then I began crying. She held me, the same way Pope had held me that night when I had cried on the beach. Hush, hush, she said, stroking my wet hair, but I couldn't stop crying. I told her everything that had happened when she left. She led me to a bench and we sat down. Did you know that I was adopted? She nodded. But you didn't say anything. She shrugged. My mother, I sniffed and wiped my tears. I don't even know who my mother is anymore. Nadu remained silent. The woman who gave birth to me still doesn't want me. She's married and has two kids. She's expecting another and she doesn't want to have anything to do with me. I went to see her yesterday and all she kept saying was how she had told Pope and I see that she didn't want any contact with me and they had broken that promise. The tears were coming fast and the tears were coming faster than I could clean them. She called me a mistake. She said I was a mistake. Nadu scooted over to where I sat and hugged me. That's not true. You know that's not true. God made you specially for Asi and Pope. That made me cry even harder. Nadu didn't say anything. When I felt better, I pulled away and wiped my nose with the back of my hand. I'm sorry about your family. She nodded, but I saw her bite her lower lip. Why didn't you say anything if you knew? You could have put me in my place like Nyawayo would. And what place would that be? There's a twinkle in her eye, and a smile was stuck in the corner of her lip. You're Pope's daughter, legally. There's nothing anyone can do about it. If they don't like it, they can go and bend the sea. I sniffed and wiped my nose with the back of my hand. Why was she being so kind to me? Speaking of Pope, speaking of which, Pope will be going out of his mind with worry. He left home 2 days ago. You should call him. She got up and went inside to the kitchen. I followed her. She gave me her phone. I shook my head. I'm not ready. You have to tell him. Tell him you're with me. I shook my head. Can I stay with you just for a while I think of what to do? Sure, but you have to tell him so he stops worrying. That time we spent the night with Asay, he was about to call the police. When we are not home at 8, your text message just came in time. He'll be really worried. She handed the phone over to me. I pushed it away. I'd been so busy thinking about myself, I hadn't even thought about anyone else's feeling. Not Pope's, not even Nene, not even Nene's. You do it. Stop being childish. When I made no move to take the phone from her, she hesitated. Then she called him herself. She chewed her lower lip while she waited for Pope to pick up. Hi, Boyki's with me. She wants you to know she's fine. She wants to spend a few days with me while she decides what she wants to do. Silence. Yes, she told me. She turned to look at me. I think she's handling it well. She came to apologize. More silence. She covered the mouthpiece with her hand. He wants to speak to you. I shook my head. She says no. An even more prolonged silence. I could tell he was talking about me. Nadu kept sneaking glances my way. I'm fine. She turned away and rubbed her belly. 2 weeks from now, the room is ready. I don't need anything. A brief silence. I said I don't need anything. An even briefer silence. I'll tell her. She turned to me. He says to tell you he loves you. I nodded. My throat felt like it was swollen shut. You must be hungry. Let's get you something to eat. She led the way to the kitchen. I followed. I followed her even though I didn't think I could get anything past the lump in my throat. Nadu opened the fridge. I was glad to see it was full of takeout containers. I hadn't eaten properly in 2 days. And though I couldn't be choosy, Nadu's cooking wasn't what I was looking forward to. She took out a Tupperware container. I sat at the island and watched her. It struck me that if she had been in Nadal with us, she wouldn't have had to fill her fridge with takeout food. Pope would have been thrilled to cook special meals just for her and their baby. Oh, she said, staring at the puddle on the floor. Initially, I thought it was water from the bowl that had poured out. I'll get them up. Where is it? She gripped her abdomen in pain and gasped. We should be getting to the hospital. My water just broke. I stood there watching her. It was taking a long time for me to process what she had said. We better get going, unless, of course, you want to deliver this baby here. She waddled over to one of the chairs and sat down. I stood rooted to the spot. She was having her baby? Now? Here? Didn't you just tell Pope your delivery date was 2 weeks away? Though she was obviously in pain, she looked amused while she said, yeah, but the baby has other ideas. She directed me to where her packed hospital bag and her car keys were. I picked up her car keys before I realized she was in no condition to drive. She couldn't even fit behind the steering wheel. You can't drive. I'm not planning to. I'm not planning to. She sat up. She got up and waddled out of the kitchen and through the hall to the front yard where her VW Touareg was parked. She waddled to the back seat and climbed in. Whoa, hold on, Nadu. I can't drive that. I don't have my driver's license yet. I haven't even practiced with my chain in ages. I could see the sweat on her upper lip and forehead. You do remember how to move, don't you? I nodded. That's all you need to do. The hospital was not far. Just a 20 minutes drive. Let me get a taxi. There's no time to get a taxi. The junction is a 30 minutes walk. Who knows how long it will be before you get a taxi? Let's go now, please. I'll talk you through it. How about the neighbors? Worky? Let's go now. I opened the front gate wider and came back to the car. I climbed in and strapped myself in. I could hear Mancha's voice in my head. I adjusted the seat, checked the mirrors, took a deep breath, and tried to quell the rising panic I was feeling. I started the car, depressed the clutch, put the gear into reverse, brought the clutch to half clutch, gradually put my foot on the accelerator and released the handbrake. The car moved and I drove this slowly out of the gate. I wanted to get down and close the gate, but Nadu said to keep going. It took me an hour to get there, to get to the hospital. I killed the fire 4 times and I didn't go faster than 20 miles per hour. I was too scared to. That was the longest one of my life. Nadu had already called the hospital to let them know we were on our way. 2 nurses had a wheelchair waiting when we arrived at the loading port. After Nadu got down, I drove to the car park. I took 2 parking spaces instead of one, but I didn't have any strength or energy left to park properly. "Your mother is in here," the nurse said to me. I joined Nadu in her room. She had been made to change to a hospital gown and had been propped up with pillows on her bed. She was ending a call to her mother when I came in. "You should call Pope." She shook her head. "You'd want to be here." Again she shook her head. "Who's being childish now? It's my fault he isn't here. He should have been here. He would have been here if it weren't for me." She grimaced. "What's happening between your dad and me is complicated," she muttered. A nurse came in to monitor her dilations. I stepped out of the room and called the same Pope I hadn't wanted to speak to 2 hours earlier. "Pope, Nadu is in labor. We are at St. Lydia's Hospital." I hung up before he could say anything and went back to wait with Nadu in her room. Nadu's mother arrived first. She had short yellow hair, rings on each finger except her thumb, and was in a neck brace. I was glad to swap places with her. An hour later, the nurse again went in to check on Nadu. "This baby is in a hurry to come out, Papa," the nurse said, running out of the room. "The baby is crowning already." She called on Audley, who then wheeled Nadu to the delivery room. The minute the doors to the delivery room swung shut, Pope and Nene came running to the waiting room. Pope hugged me. "Don't you ever do that to me, Boyki. Don't you ever. I already lost a wife. I can't lose a daughter too." I was so worried. I pulled out of his embrace and shouted, "Go, go, go, you'll miss it." At the doors, he turned back and said, "Promise you'll be here when I get back." I nodded. Once Pope disappeared behind the doors, Nene attached himself to me like a used chewing gum under a school desk. He even wanted to follow me to the female washroom. He wanted to make sure I didn't disappear again. Either that or he wanted me to take him with me if I decided to leave. I had no intention of doing either. I was tired of running. "How did you guys get here so fast? I thought you'd get stuck in traffic at about." "We left as soon as Nadu said you were with her. We were already at the Tetekwa. She ran about when you called to say Nadu was having the baby." About an hour later, Nadu was wheeled back into her room. Her mother and Pope were with her, along with a baby girl wrapped in a white receiving blanket. The nurses who were hovering around Nadu said hers was the fastest delivery they had ever seen. "Come and meet your sister," Pope said. Then I was the first to walk over. Pope looked up from the baby's face and held out his hand. "You too, Boyki. Come and meet your sister." I stood where I was and stared at the chubby, bald baby in Nadu's arms. There was no mistaking who her parents were. "Obolobo," Nadu's mom said affectionately. "What's her name?" Then I asked. Nadu's mom said he would have to wait for the naming ceremony to find out. The Pope shook his head. "She's called Berko," he said, looking at me. "She's the second girl in the family." A lump rose in my throat and my eyes watered instantly. I smiled through my tears as Pope came to where I was standing, put an arm around me and led me to see my baby sister. A bubbly good feeling spread through me, starting from my heart and growing outward until I felt it in the tips of my toes and on the crown of my head. It didn't bother me that Pope and Nadu were holding hands, or that Pope was stroking the back of Nadu's hand with his thumb. I didn't even mind when he bent down to kiss Nadu on the lips in front of everyone. This was my family. This was where I belonged.